unity in all that we do. It isn't
Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org. If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day. Hey, welcome everybody to Two Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. I don't know about you, but I am excited. We've got a fascinating guest, Navy veteran, and I am looking forward to this. So let's just dig into it. We have Jerry Warner. Jerry Warner is a Navy veteran. He is now in the energy field as a consultant, and he has also got a new book out called Grandpa's Adventures in the U.S. Navy, Soul Searching on the Way to Mars. Let's welcome Jerry Warner.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation, Donald. Very nice to be here.
Hey, I'm happy to have you on. So,
and if the two drunk dudes are supposed to be you and me, I'm not quite there yet. Okay.
Me neither, man. I ever since my co-host dropped off, I just tell everybody that they got to drink enough till they see two of me. So we're gonna leave it up to the audience to create that second drunk dude. But so why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where you grew up and what brought you to the Navy?
Well, I grew up in rural Wisconsin, very small town. I went to high school in Elk Mound, Wisconsin, which is between Menominee and Eau Claire, for those who are familiar with Wisconsin. And as a kid, I liked to watch airplanes when I could. By the way, I'll be turning 76 years old in March.
Wow.
So it gives you some feeling for when this is all happening. But by the time I was 13 years old, I was really excited about the space program. And the original astronauts had already gone into space. And they wrote a book called We 7. And I used that as my guide because I wanted to be an astronaut and walk on Mars. Why Mars? Because I knew that we'd be on the moon well before I'd be ready for it. Mars had to be close beyond that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like 10 years, right? We can talk about that more later. So it's been 10 years the rest of my lifetime. But that was the most exciting thing I could think of. So how do you get to be an astronaut when you're looking at it in the 1961? Well, the book We 7, I took notes on it, and all of them went to college, of course, but most of them went to Service Academy, the Naval Academy. They all had master's degrees in technical subject, most of them aeronautical engineering. They were fighter pilots, and very successful and outstanding fighter pilots, and then test pilots. So academy, master's in aero, fighter pilot, test pilot. That became my astronaut track. So the next 20 years I worked on trying to accomplish each of those things. And this is the story about that. Now, there are a whole bunch of intermediate stories that I used to tell my kids. And I wrote the book once I retired. Wrote the book because my sons especially insisted on it. Dad, you told us 100 stories over the years. You really should document them for our kids, for the grandkids. So hence, Grandpa, that's why it's called Grandpa's Adventures in the U.S. Navy. And each of the chapters has a little vignette at the end, a little advice to the grandchildren about what I learned during that particular phase.
Okay.
So that's an overview.
All right. I think your kids are exactly spot on. I mean, I just did the same thing. I wrote a book for my kids, just kind of explaining how what the things that I went through the military and things that I didn't talk about, and answer some of their questions that they had growing up. And I think it's important that we have that open communication, and that we not only are talking about it with our kids, but we're documenting our war and our time of service with the rest of the world. It's hard telling in 20 years what they're going to be teaching in schools about our war. And if we're not documenting it now, we're not going to have a voice then either. So I think that is amazing, and I think that is extremely important with what you're doing.
I'm really happy to learn that you're doing the same thing for your kids. And you don't have grandchildren yet. You're too young, right?
No, I do. I got 6.
6! You're ahead of me. Here I am, at least 25 years older than you.
I'm 49.
Yeah. Wow. Good
Yeah.
for you. You got an earlier start than I did.
It's because my kids didn't listen.
Your kids didn't listen.
I said, wait till after college. That did not happen.
Oh, God bless you. Well, my book is going to be published by Amazon here soon. They're going to announce a release date any day now when the launch will be. But with your permission, I'd like to read a little blurb that Amazon and I co-wrote that describes the overview of the book. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. If you like stories of high adventure where life and death hang in the balance, you've come to the right place. I should have been dead more than a dozen times. If you want to know what it's like to be on astronaut track and how to go from obscurity to NASA's doorstep, this book will give you some clues. You'll be riding along with me as we take a spin in the world's fastest fighter jet. We will not only break the sound barrier together, we will go more than 2 times the speed of sound and almost die doing it. You'll learn what it feels like to get shot out of a cannon. That is an aircraft carrier catapult. We'll survive a Category 5 hurricane together on a U.S. Navy destroyer. You'll share a cell with me in prisoner of war camp. You'll experience the joy of being in a coffin filled with garbage. That's crossing the equator. We'll share 5 weeks of adventure at the real Top Gun fighter weapons school. We'll meet the Soviet defector who stole the MiG-25. And there'll still be some time left over for romance.
Wow. So, man, there is some big points in that blurb. I mean, I can't wait to dig into this. So, where does this story start? Does it start in the Navy as a pilot, or what'd you come in the Navy as?
It starts in a kid in a cornfield in west central Wisconsin. That's where it starts.
Okay. All right.
And knowing that the first step needed to be a service academy. I went to tiny high school, Elk Mound, Wisconsin. Total student population of all 4 years, 185.
Wow.
And not very many students went on to college. Most were farmers and went back to work on Dad's farm. But there was nobody, of course, who had gone to a service academy. So I figured if I had a chance at such a small high school, I'd have to be number one in everything. So that's where it started: sports, music, public speaking, so forth. Of course, academics. That's where it started. And okay. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy because it was a bright, shiny thing at that time. I was only 6 years old. And I thought that being in the Air Force Academy would be more of a stepping stone to the space program, to NASA.
Okay.
So I applied to the Air Force Academy, and that was the first of the 16 things in my career that I failed at. I failed to get into the Air Force Academy first try. So I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison NROTC program, the Navy ROTC program, which was also a full scholarship. And I would go, there was no Air Force ROTC nearby in Minnesota or Wisconsin. And then I went to my counselor, who was Navy counselor in the NROTC program. I had to do a career counseling session with him. What do you want to do with your career, Werner? I said, I want to be an astronaut. Oh, that's great. I said, I'm going to reapply to the Air Force Academy. You're going to do what? Air Force. Air Force pilots are a bunch of pussies. They all land on a 12,000-foot runway. Anybody can do that. Best pilots in the world are Navy pilots. Down Donald, it won't surprise you to know the guy who was talking to me was wearing wings. He was a Navy pilot.
But I think he's even if he was a little bit biased, I think he's 100% accurate. I really do.
Yeah, well, I believe he is too. But there were some nights when I had running out of low on fuel and nothing to land on but that postage stamp bumping around in the dark that I wished I had a 12,000-foot runway to land on.
I'm sure you did.
But that's how I ended up in the Navy.
Okay.
I reapplied this time for the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy. And this was on a presidential appointment. I got into the Naval Academy. And that's the first of the big goals to accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so that brings you coming in as an officer. Am I correct?
Yes. So I became a midshipman while I was at the Naval Academy. Also, I was a midshipman in NROTC, but I came in as an officer, yes, as an ensign once I graduated.
Okay. Yeah. So how long was the time at the academy?
Well, academy is a 4-year program.
Okay.
So I already had 1 year in NROTC, so I had 5 years of college paid for by the taxpayers.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's, I think that's something that the military did get right, was helping out with schooling between the academies, the GI Bill, and all sorts of other programs out there. I think that is the one thing that they did get right. So absolutely, I think that's something that every soldier should take care of is get some college while you're in and not be lazy, because it's only going to help you later. And
Yes.
obviously it did for you. So you come out of the academy, and where is your first duty station?
Well, the first duty station should have been in Pensacola, Florida for flight school. But things were jammed up at that time. That was 1971. They were jammed up so much the class before us sat around and did nothing but eat.
Have you ever wondered how you can help out the show? Well, that is very simple. You can help us out by going to www.twodrunkdudesinAgunroom.com. That is www.twodrunkdudesinAgunroom.com. There's many ways you can help us by listening to the show, supporting the show, liking, sharing, and everything else that comes along with social media. But one of our biggest goals is to help build the nonprofit Heroes Voice Media Foundation. This is a foundation that has decided to start celebrating courage and amplifying heroes. Find your voice with Heroes Voice Media Foundation.
Drink and hang out at the bars while they're waiting for their turn to fly. So the commandant at the academy decided to send our class of aviators off to sea for 6 months to a year, so we'd at least learn something while we're earning a paycheck. So I went off to Newport, Rhode Island on an oiler replenishment ship, got my officer of the deck underway qualification with them while I was there, and had a good time. And I was a bachelor in Boston for the summer, and I won't forget that.
I'm sure
some of that's in the book.
Does that by chance fall in the a little bit of time left over for romance part?
Yes, it does.
I bet it did. I absolutely do. So, man, what was that like, being out there in 1971 on a ship?
Well, what's probably going to sound stupid to the listener is I had been through 5 years of training with the University of Wisconsin at 4 years at Naval Academy, and I'm about to approach my first ship. I'm going to be responsible for 40 young men in radarmen, corpsmen, combat information center, so forth. And I was nervous that I didn't know enough to do this job. 5 years of training, I felt insecure walking down the gangplank ready to welcome aboard the ship. But I found out pretty quickly that I knew enough about each one of those subjects, and I had a good background in leadership, and things all worked out well. But that was notable to me after all that training, that I wasn't fully confident that I could do a job and be the boss of 40 people.
I think that falls with everybody. Um, even going from E4 to E5 for myself, where I'm going from working in a squad to being a squad leader, and I'm going back to the exact same job I've been doing for years. You have to approach things differently, and until you start leading soldiers and you see that transformation that happens in them, I think all of us are a little bit unsecure. The army, I can only speak for them, but I know a lot of us fake it till we make it. We just, whatever answer you want, we're going to give it to you, and we're going to give it confidently. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, but we're going to be absolutely 100% sure that that's the answer. And that's kind of what gets a lot of soldiers through is confidence, but it doesn't come until you've actually put boots on ground and done it. So it does make sense to me.
It's a big step to go from standing in the ranks to standing in front of them and
Yep.
being the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's harder for the officers. I really do, because what came to me in 5 years of actually being in the military and doing the job, you guys come out of the school and get it even more. You have more people. I had a squad of 5 or 6. You had 40 people your first time out of school, and there's a lot of life lessons that come from in the military that until you've approached them and seen them, you don't get those. And so I think it is harder for the officers because the amount of responsibility put on them is a lot more at a very younger period in their military career.
Well, we had the benefit of the NCOs and the chief petty officers who have a lot more knowledge than we did. And for the most part, though, that worked out great for us.
Yep.
But I did have a problem with my master chief petty officer, my very first one as an ensign. So
Yeah.
so that was a challenge.
I'm sure, and it sounds like it's exactly the same in the Army. The lieutenants rely on their staff sergeants. I was there for many years, and I've groomed a lot of officers, and most listened. Most of them knew that they needed that experience to be on their side. There was a few that thought they knew it all day one, and they learned.
Yeah.
But so you go out to sea. You come back, and where are you off to next?
Along the way, I failed my failed my initial Navy physical exam for flat feet. So almost from the beginning, I didn't get in. And the flat feet story is that I was turned down, and I was physically qualified in every other way, but disqualified for flat feet. So I asked for a second opinion, and the second opinion was, yeah, you got flat feet and you're rejected. I said, well, I want to talk to, and I was just an 18-year-old at the time. I want to talk to whoever's senior here, senior medical officer, whoever it is. And I had to hang out for a couple of hours while everybody else went home until he would see me. I said, look, I've been playing 4 sports. I've been marching in the band. I've been working on farms. My feet have never bothered me. How could you disqualify me for flat feet? So he listened, he took a look at my feet, signed me off, and I was on my way. Well, when it came time to be a pilot, I failed the exam again, this time for a deviated septum, that cartilage that's in the middle of your nose that separates the 2 nostrils.
Yeah.
Was smashed over to one side, and I think it happened from boxing at the Naval Academy. But regardless of where it came from, it had to be fixed. So that operation had to take place before I could go to flight school.
Okay.
And it was successful.
That absolutely is probably where it came from.
Yeah.
I boxed for several years in the Army, and yep, I'm pretty sure that's where it came from.
And boxing was not my favorite sport. We had to use a greasy old stinky leather gear that had been used by 1,000 other guys.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I wanted to go all Army is what I wanted to do. And I learned really quick, the higher up I got, the harder they hit and the faster they were, and a lot better at it than I was. So I ended up giving that dream up. But yeah, I did enjoy it. So you get into flight school. How long is flight school for what
Flight
you're doing?
school for me was 3 years,
Okay.
but I was getting my master's degree at the same time, which I don't recommend to anybody. That was wicked. I did flunk out of the master's program and got kicked out of school for not maintaining my grades. At the same time, I got 3 flight failures flying. It was just super intense. It was 2 full-time jobs overlapping for me.
Yeah.
Almost more than I could handle. But eventually I got both on track, ended up going from last place as pilot grades to first place before I left. And my master's degree, I ended up not graduating the top of my class, but I had the best master's thesis. We had a group thesis that tried to describe how air traffic would change with various conditions. And so the air traffic passenger demand model was mine. And using what I learned at the Naval Academy, I was able to create a model that they sold to the FAA. And when the oil embargo came around in '73, the oil crisis, and prices went up 400%, it was my model that the FAA used to predict the change in air traffic. And it turned out to be a good predictor.
Wow.
So I went from almost last in my class in both flying and academics to a point of where I got some recognition.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take that over top in the class any day of the week, man. That's pretty impressive.
But
So-
before I even got there, the initial flying for Navy pilots is, and it's same for any pilot of any kind of airplane, whether they're going commercial or the military. You start out in a relatively simple airplane, and that one we had to have high flight grades, had to be in the top 10 or 20% in order to move on to jets. And I had to go to jets, so I was going to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And going to be an astronaut. And I missed it by 1/100th of a point, and had to negotiate with the Czech pilot to change just 1 grade on there. He left the room to talk to my regular instructor. It's going on agonizing, probably 15, 20 minutes at most. And he came back, he took out the eraser and changed it from a below average to an average. One grade, that's all I needed to get into jets. Yippee.
Wow, man, this has been a challenge to get there. I mean, I know it's tough, but man, it seems like you've had obstacle after obstacle after obstacle.
I know that many of your listeners suffer from PTSD, and I had some in limited category. I almost drowned as a kid underneath a pontoon boat. Took in gulps of air, and I thought I was a goner.
Wow.
But it made me really conscious of being underwater, very uncomfortable being underwater. Well, in the Navy, there are tests after test after test for in the water. So
Yeah.
as long as I could have my head above the water, I was fine. But one of the tests was a jump from a 3-meter board, a 10-foot board, into the pool, Olympic-sized pool, and stay underwater and swim the length of it with a flight suit on. And I struggled with that and started getting relapses to the feelings I had when I was drowning.
Mm-hmm.
So I failed it. They put me on the substandard squad, and I was on the substandard squad for what was allowed was 4 weeks. So Monday through Friday, every day I had to be there at between 4 and 5 o'clock to do the underwater swim. And I did it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the last week, down to the last day, Friday, 4:55 p.m. I had 5 minutes left and my career was over. And so part of the book describes that I said a prayer and asked for the help. At the time, the Beatles song "Let It Be" was at the top of the charts, singing about Mother Mary, "Let It Be."
Uh-huh.
So I figured rather than bother God the Father, who had to be pretty busy himself, I never asked her for anything. So I asked her for help to get to the end of the pool. And I believed that she helped me, so I made it. I got to the end of the pool and I leaped out with a scream and a cheer that you'd think I won the gold medal at the Olympics. But I came that close to ending my Navy flying career because I couldn't do the underwater swim.
Yeah. So when you go in, is it like the Army? So in our flight school for helicopters, obviously we don't have no jets. When the warrant officers and the officers go to the school, they don't get to choose what they're going to fly. Between their testing, they get asked what they like to fly, but between their testing and their scores and what the military needs, they dictate what helicopter you're going to fly. Is it like that in the Navy too? That you
It's,
don't know what you're going to do?
you don't, that's just true. You did not know what you're going to get coming right out of flight school. You knew that if you were in the top 10 to 20% in the initial primary, that you could go to jets. But then where you went, what jet you went into afterwards was still up in the air. So when it came time for selection for me, and I still wanted to go to a fighter, and the fighter on the front line at that time was the F-4 Phantom. I wanted to go to a Phantom squadron. But the war had ended, Vietnam, and although they didn't cut back on flying jobs immediately, they did just a month before my assignment. So half the jobs were eliminated. And those who were in the bottom half of their grades they got a desk to fly. My grades were in the upper half, so I got a flying job, but the flying job was to go back to flying the little propeller airplane that we started with, the T-34. And that would have been the end of my career. I would have never gotten into jets from being an instructor for 2 years in a little propeller plane. So I called on my commanding officer from the oiler replenishment ship from Boston, the one we talked about, and he was an aviator. He said, "Jerry, I'm sorry I'm not in a position to help you. But guess what, Donald? The next day, the detailer called and sent me off to a jet squadron to be a jet instructor for jets in Meridian, Mississippi." And I'm really grateful to Captain Jack for doing that.
Wow, that is awesome. So you went from out of school to disappointment because you're going to fly the lower class aircraft to instructing the jets that you wanted to fly for the Navy.
Well, the jets that would be training students, not the F-4 Phantom yet. This would be the T-2 Buckeye jet trainer, which I had already flown, but I would now be teaching new students how to fly it.
Okay. And is that so? How did that help you, or did it help you get to towards the NASA program? Was it connections, or was there something else that position helped you?
Well, that's a great question. Because I was disappointed being plowed back to be an instructor instead of going forward to an F-4 squadron. Was a 2-year additional delay in my race to space. I felt like I was under 2 years behind my peers who would be ahead of me.
Yeah.
But I got a bunch of flight hours, and they were quality hours because I had to understand every one of the maneuvers, teach them to somebody, give them good feedback, which is way better than just doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And among that package of things that we had to do were anti-spin classes, where we'd put the airplane into a spin and the student have to get it out. And most of the instructors did not like that job. So,
Yeah,
hey Jerry, would you mind taking my flight tomorrow? No problem at all. So I got most of the spin flights, not because I liked them, because it was more flight hours for me. I needed 1,500 hours to get into test pilot school.
So,
and Donald, as it turns out, that those hundreds of spins that I did is going to come in really handy when I get into the F-4 Phantom and become a fighter pilot.
Okay.
Because I'm able to handle anything. I'm confident no matter zero airspeed, rotating around, spinning upside down, doesn't matter. I'm comfortable doing it.
Yeah, and you don't have a new guy doing it while you're sitting in the co-pilot
Right.
seat. He gets it out.
No, I didn't pray. I had my hands right there, hands and feet ready to go on the rudders. I wasn't going to let anything happen to us.
Yeah, man. So So I'm assuming that you go from this to the Phantom Squadron that you've been trying to get to.
Not automatically. As you know, I'm sure it's the same in the Army as it is in the Navy. Your commanding officer has the final say on who goes where and who gets promoted or who gets special assignment. Well, a commanding officer at the training squadron in Meridian, Mississippi did not like me. And he would not give me an endorsement for fighters. And I told him I wanted to become an astronaut. He said, you're too late. I said I wanted to go to Mars. He says, you're too late. My kids are more likely to go there than you. But I didn't. It turns out he was prescient, but I didn't know it at the time. So general knowledge all along has been, we're just 10 years away from Mars, as it is today.
Yep.
But he wouldn't give me an endorsement. I went to the executive officer. He wouldn't give me an endorsement. Well, what do you do? I looked at my career plans. I said, well, maybe I want to be a lawyer, a JAG, a Judge Advocate General, a Navy JAG. So I actually applied for flights I took the LSAT and applied to law school and got accepted. But while I waited for a miracle to happen, Donald, the miracle happened. The executive officer had a nervous breakdown. The EMTs came in and took him in a straitjacket and white coats and all, and we never saw him again. And the man who replaced him, a Marine major, really liked me. I took him out on the golf course. We played golf. And the 19th hole, we talked over that I needed an endorsement for fighter squadron. 2 weeks later, the endorsement for the fighter squadron came through.
Wow.
My guardian angel.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of coincidence, man. It's like where all the big law deals happen is on the golf course. So that's where it happened for you. You just had to apply for law school to learn the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Never heard anybody observe it that way. Yeah.
So you finally make it. You're there. You're at the fighter squadron. How was that?
Well, preparing for the fighter squadron, we had to do prisoner of war training first. In the Army, did you ever have to go through prisoner of war training?
Yeah, SEER school. Yep.
You call it SEER school as well?
Yep.
Yeah, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape.
Yep.
They never taught us anything about escape. How about you, Donald? Did they teach you anything about that? Taught us well in the first three.
Well, they taught us the attempt of escape. You were going to get captured. I mean, part of it we had to go get to a safe house, and you if you got caught, between the days of you trying to get there, that was just more days you spent in the prison camp. And you thought if you made it to the safe house that you weren't going to have to go to the prison camp, but a little surprise, you end up doing at least one day in the prison camp. So yeah, everybody was guaranteed to end up there.
Yes, they were. Same thing in the Navy. Well, there were 40 guys in my cohort, and I was number 2 in seniority. Mm-hmm. So I was war criminal number 2, according to the People's Republic of North America, were our captors. And they insisted that I give a salute to the camp commander. Now, I knew from my training that I was supposed to salute the camp commander, so I gave him a regular American salute. And he said, we don't accept salutes from the murderous country of the United States. You give us the PR, give us our salute, which is a closed fist pump against the heart. Well, I wouldn't do it. In the back of my mind, I know my friend Mike French had said before I went, he'd been through it already, don't be John Wayne. So that was in the back of my mind, but still I refused to give him the salute. They beat me up, roughed me up. Yep. Finally, they grabbed me, stripped me naked. 2 grabbed my hands, 2 grabbed my legs, and tossed me out in a snowbank, Maine, in the state of Maine in May. In the book, I say the Navy has an expression, cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey. I was that monkey.
I bet. Maine gets awfully cold.
And when I got back inside, it was clear who was in charge, and it wasn't me.
Yeah. I mean, for us, they always would tell us to, before they would slap us, they would tell us to grab our rags and make us grab your pant legs and hold on to them. And then they would slap you. They were not, it always seemed like they were not supposed to go wider than their shoulders when they slapped you. But there was a few, I think, that reached back in Arkansas sometimes.
Oh boy.
But yeah.
We were told they could do anything as long as they didn't leave a scar or break any bones.
Yeah, there's another level for that that the SF guys, and I'm sure the SEALs and all them have to go through. And there's a waiver that says that they can break a minor bone, a finger or something like that. At least I was told. I've never been to it. I went during my time with the 160th. So I personally don't think I'd want to sign that waiver that says you can break my fingers. That's for sure.
No, I wouldn't either.
So
then I got into training. Before I could fly the F-4 Phantom, I had to be trained in how to fly it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that was simulator, and of course a lot of classroom and so forth. But the F-4 Phantom has no controls in the back seat, so the very first takeoff, you're on your own. Well, except that you have an instructor in the back seat who'll talk you through anything that you. And what a thrill that was. It was the fastest fighter in the world at the time, Mach 2.23 top end. But its climb rate was just incredible. World's record, 0 to 41,000 feet in 1 minute.
Wow.
It was just incredible. When I took off, I've flown 32 different airplanes in my lifetime. There's only 2 of them that I remember the first takeoff. One was the first airplane I ever flew in. I remember that, of course, and the Phantom. It was just unbelievable. And it was like the cockpit was just made for me. Now I'm 5'9", but I have a wingspan of 6'1", and that turned out to be just perfect for that dynamic. When I was a kid playing basketball in high school, I was up against a kid from Altoona, Wisconsin, who was a full foot taller than me, 6'9", and I wish that I was as tall as him playing basketball. But sometimes our wishes are, you can't have it both ways. Yep. I could not have been a fighter pilot because I wouldn't have fit into the cockpit or the ejection seat if I were that tall.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that, when you finally find your path, you'll start seeing all the reasons why things happened in the past to get you to where they're at. So how long were you with that squadron?
I was in training squadron 101 about 6 months. Then I went on to the really daily workday job, the VF-102 Diamondbacks. I had no idea how good they were or how good they were going to be, but that was also the perfect place. But Donald, before I left, the F-14 Tomcat had shown up, the newest, brightest, shiniest object, but it had some serious engine problems. So I was offered by my boss to fly the F-14 Tomcat instead of the F-4 Phantom. And boy, did I make the right choice in turning him down, because that airplane struggled for 9 years with engine problems until they replaced it with General Electric GE engines, which were really good. But the F-4 Phantom had phenomenally stable and secure airplane and really good engines where you could do anything to them and wouldn't hurt them any. So I went to the VF-102 Diamondbacks. But I was joining them just before they were going on cruise, and joining them as a rookie pilot, even though I was older than the others. Mm-hmm. And rookie pilots referred to as nuggets. And my introductory interview to the squadron, the executive officer interviewed me and said, "Werner, I told him I didn't want you. I don't need another fucking nugget right before our first cruise." Sorry for the language. You can bleep that, right?
No, you're good. You're good. This is an open mic show.
Oh, okay.
So
that was my welcome aboard.
Yeah, I bet.
But it was serious. The situation at an aircraft carrier is so serious. So many people die. In the book, The Right Stuff, he quotes, Tom Wolfe quotes the Navy statistics as being 23% chance that you'll die in an aircraft accident if you stay in for 20 years.
Wow.
And that doesn't count combat. Combat is not considered accidental. So the death rate was really high. I lost, by the time I finished flying for the Navy in 1981, I lost 31 of my friends to aircraft accidents. So when he said he didn't want another Nugget, he meant just like the New York Yankees don't want an untested rookie on the field because they may cause them to lose some games, but for the Navy, it's caused people lose their lives. And it was, and during the cruise, there was a couple of Nuggets that did die. And one of my chapters is called "Life and Death in a Navy Fighter Squadron," how people react to the death of somebody in the squadron. And I'm sure in the Army there's a protocol for how you deal with somebody who dies in combat or accidentally.
Yeah. So I'm assuming cruise meaning you guys are now out on a ship.
Mediterranean, 6 months. Yes.
Wow. Good old Med. So what was the purpose that you guys were out there? Was it just for show of force, or was there something else that you guys were doing while you were out there?
Some of us freedom navigation, keeping the airways, the waterways open.
Mm-hmm.
The Greeks wanted to make part of it, their waterway, unnavigable.
Mm-hmm.
Libya tried to claim 200 miles out from their shore. So we intentionally flew in there to show them that they can't do that. It was a Cold War with the Soviet Union still happening. So the Soviets would send their Badgers or Bears, their big bombers, to fly over and take pictures. Our job was to intercept them. Because we had such good intelligence, we knew when they were coming. And we would make sure we position ourselves between the bomber and the aircraft carrier so that any photograph taken by the bomber would show a Diamondback F-4 Phantom in their picture. And when the two countries, Soviet Union and USA, were getting along well, they were rather friendly. They'd wave to us from the window, show us a centerfold from Playboy that they got before we did. But when things were not good, that same guy, instead of showing you a centerfold, would show his middle finger.
Yeah.
And the pilot would sometimes dip the wing, like to try to crunch a fighter. I don't know what the hell he thought that was going to accomplish, trying to hit one of us. It's going to cause damage to himself too.
Yeah.
But those were the games that were played.
Wow. I think I remember something as a kid about Libya and them claiming so much area off of the coast. I can't remember why, but I want to say I remember hearing something about that as a kid.
Yeah, we're talking 1977. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It would have been probably after that, I guess, maybe. I was born in 74, so it must have been for something else. Maybe it was an interview or something.
Well, it continued to be an issue into the early 80s after I got out of the Navy. And finally one of my old buddies shot them down as it came after them.
And that may have been what it was then. Was from that.
Well, my goal during the time with the VF-102 Diamondbacks was to be recognized as a top fighter pilot. So I would be on astronaut track. I had to be recognized as a top fighter pilot. And my first commanding officer, Dick Wyman, as I tell in the book, didn't really like me all that much. And I did a couple of things that he displeased him. But the worst was after my roommate had died, got crashed. I had a bad night at the back of the boat myself. Went round and round 5 times before I got it landed. When I got down to the ready room, I don't know about the Army, but at least the Naval Academy, they teach praise in public, reprimand in private. Well, he never got that word. So the ready room was about half full, and he just cranked onto me. Profanity laced. I was the worst pilot ever, and embarrassed him, embarrassed the squadron, and on and on and on and on. Well, he gave me what's called an average fitness report, average performance evaluation. Yeah. But that was not good for somebody who wanted to get into test pilot school. I needed to be top tier, recommended for accelerated promotion, and specifically recommended for test pilot school. He did none of that, so I thought that perhaps was the end of it for me.
Well, it sounds like you just needed another case where you called in the Looney Tunes and they just threw him in a white jacket and hauled him off.
It was a little too late. He submitted this performance review.
Damn
But the
it.
guy who replaced him, Drex Goober Bradshaw, turned out to really like me. And he put the best radar intercept officer, backseater, best Rio on my backseat. Guy was third tour there. And he was just fabulous. So in 3 months, it turned around completely. And I went from being in the dregs to be getting recommended to go to Top Gun.
Wow.
And now I didn't go as a primary, I went as a secondary, but I didn't care. Get to go to Top Gun is just one of the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And once I got to Top Gun, I lost the first fight badly. And the guy who was the instructor said, the only way you can beat the F5, he was flying the F5, is a vertical reversal. And he says, I don't know how to do it. I only know one guy who could ever do it. But if you can use the climb advantage of the F4 Phantom, you can beat the F5, you can beat almost anybody. So I said, aha, I got to figure out how to do this. And so I went out 3 days in a row practicing the vertical reversal till I finally figured out how to do it. And once I did it, nobody could touch me. So I had the Top Gun experience, I had the vertical reversal. I came back and we did the evaluation, the annual evaluation happened to happen just as I came back with VF-43, the adversaries, and I was at the top of my game. It'd be like if you're a tennis player and you just played tennis against the best players in the world for 5 straight weeks, come back to your hometown, you'd do pretty well, right?
Yeah. Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org. If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day.
Yeah, I did pretty well. I was number one. And then I got a call from Top Gun saying I was number one at Top Gun. I was number one in the local adversaries training. I had the most flight hours of any F4 Phantom pilot in 1978. My wife, Arlene, likes to tell people, you know, Jerry was a Top Gun, and one year he burned up more fuel than anybody else.
Yeah, I believe it. I do believe it. So how did NASA come about then?
Okay, well then I needed to be Naval Academy, needed to be Masters in Aero, which I got, needed to be a top fighter pilot, and they named me Fighter Pilot of the Year. So that got me into test pilot school. And once in test pilot school, I did well there. But the political nature of any business is that I carpooled with one of the bosses at the test center. And he really liked me, and we went back and forth on technical issues and flying and all sorts of subjects. We spent an hour and a half together every day, Monday through Friday, for 6 months. And he decided he wanted me to come after the year at test pilot school. He wanted me to come work for him and to test the Navy's newest fighter, the F-18 Hornet. And I was ecstatic until the next day when I asked him, what am I going to be doing with the F-18 Hornet? He said, you'll be dropping nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, or testing the airplane's ability to do it and just write the procedures for doing it.
Wow.
So I had 6 months to contemplate, did I want to do that part of my life?
Yeah.
I was fine with being a fighter pilot and dropping bombs on bridges and military targets.
Yeah.
But I was not fine with dropping something so indiscriminate as a nuclear weapon to wipe out 1 million people in a single swipe.
Yeah.
So that's a short answer to a long question, but it took me 6 months. And then not to give away the final chapters, is how did the Navy react to that?
Probably not happy.
No. But in the end, it all came out. But the last 2 chapters go through the step by step how people reacted to it. Won't surprise you that sent me off to Bethesda Naval Hospital to prove I was insane.
Wow.
And the senior medical officer sent me back to them saying he's completely sane. That wasn't good enough. They sent me back to get a second opinion.
I mean, it seems more insane that you would want to write procedures on how to take 1 million people out.
Exactly.
Man, yeah, I don't think I want that either. I definitely wouldn't.
Sane equals willing to kill 1 million people. Insane means resisting, wanting to.
Yeah. No. I mean, I have no issue with fighting and shooting and killing combatants.
No.
But when you start bringing the general public in it, that changes everything. You know, they have no control over the war, and they didn't ask for it. They're just stuck in the middle of it. And a bomb like that is, like you just said, is not going to know the difference. You know. So yeah, no, I would not want to either. So I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch, but you know, I want you to take a moment and tell everybody when your book's going to come out, where they can get it, and any social media links or anything you got where somebody could reach out and maybe ask you a question or something like that.
Okay. I sent in the final manuscript, which is supposed to go to publishing Friday, and the launch date will be announced someday soon. I'm expecting this week or next we'll be getting a launch date. And when we get that, how can I share that with?
If you just send it to me via email, I can
Yes.
I can actually put it out through all my social media, or and I can also put it up on my website.
Beautiful. That would be wonderful. I already sent the PDF version out to about 100 people because I'm looking for reviews, day 1 reviews, and that's I just got a couple of them come in today. Really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, it's Grandpa's Adventures in the U.S. Navy, Soul Searching on the Way to Mars. And although there's a light strain of religion, God, Christianity throughout the whole story, it really comes down to the end question is, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
And I think I know what he would do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jerry, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this fascinating story. I mean, there were so many things that you said that just had me. I wish we had another 2 hours to talk about some of this stuff, you know. But if you don't mind holding tight, we'll go ahead and do our send-offs, and then we'll do a little bit of talk about where we can send all the links to and all that stuff.
Sounds great. Thanks, Donald.
All right. Well, you take care. I'll be with you in just a minute. All right. So, man, mind blowing. I mean, the stuff that he had accomplished in his career, and you know, the closest I ever came to Top Gun, I'm not gonna lie, was the movie theater. I mean, that is definitely the closest I've ever came to Top Gun of anything. But I can just imagine, you know, how much more difficult back then it would have been to accomplish the things that he accomplished without the internet, without phones. You know, there's a lot of resources that we take advantage of today with media that wasn't available back then. And so the stuff that he did was honest, you know, elbows to manual labor and just putting his nose to the grindstone and getting it accomplished. So, man, you know, fascinating story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. Y'all take care. I hope y'all come back next week. Have a good one.